A single helmet, sitting on a chunk of broken brick in the rubble of Stalingrad's shattered factory district, November 1942. Feldwebel Klaus Bauer studied it through his Carabinier 98K scope, 6-power magnification, 400 meters out. The Soviet helmet balanced on debris, deliberately visible, amateur work, obvious bait. He'd seen this trick before. His spotter whispered range corrections, wind from the east, temperature dropping fast. Bauer adjusted for the cold, weapons seized at -20 if you weren't careful. The helmet didn't move. Behind it, somewhere in that maze of shattered concrete and twisted steel, a Soviet sniper waited. Standard tactic: fire at the decoy, reveal your position, die. Bauer wasn't standard. He scanned the terrain systematically, checking windows, drainage pipes, the classic hides his training manual prescribed. Nothing. The rubble pile itself was too obvious. No competent sniper would position there. Too exposed, too simple. The kind of spot a factory worker with a rifle might choose. Which meant it was safe to ignore. He moved his crosshairs past the obvious position, searching for the real threat, the clever concealment, the camouflaged nest some veteran marksman had spent hours preparing in a bombed-out apartment overlooking the... The shot came from the rubble pile. 7.62 by 54mm R, Mosin-Nagant, from exactly where he'd dismissed. Bauer's spotter collapsed sideways, blood spreading across frozen ground. In 3 seconds, the Soviet position went silent. No follow-up shot, no movement, just silence, and the smell of cordite, and the growing certainty that everything Bauer had been taught about sniper warfare was being rewritten in the ruins of this city. The helmet was gone now. So was the shooter. And Bauer was alone with a corpse and a terrible understanding. The Soviets weren't playing by German rules anymore.
September 1942. The Wehrmacht had entered Stalingrad expecting another blitzkrieg victory. Instead, they found a charnel house. The city sprawled along the Volga's west bank, industrial center, transportation hub, 35 miles of factories and apartment blocks. When German bombs arrived in August, they killed 40,000 civilians in the first week. The Luftwaffe flew 2,000 sorties on October 14th alone. They turned 90% of the city into broken teeth of concrete and steel. This was the problem. German sniper doctrine, refined through careful study of Soviet tactics on the Eastern Front, emphasized perfect concealment. Their training manuals, developed at facilities near Judenburg and Seetaler Alpa, taught 3 principles: invisible approach, flawless camouflage, unpredictable position selection. The best German snipers could hold position for days without detection. Matthias Hetzenauer would achieve 346 confirmed kills using these methods. Sepp Allerberger modified umbrellas to create mobile hide systems. Perfection was the German standard. The Soviets developed something else entirely. On September 17, 1942, a former Pacific Fleet clerk named Vasily Zaitsev crossed the Volga into hell. His superiors recognized talent immediately. From 800 meters, using a standard-issue Mosin-Nagant, he'd killed 3 German soldiers in his combat debut. 40 kills in his first 10 days. They gave him a Pu 3.5x scope and authorization to innovate. What Zaitsev understood, what the entire 62nd Army Sniper Corps began to grasp, was that German precision created exploitable assumptions. When enemy doctrine insisted on elaborate concealment, the crudest position became invisible through contradiction. A German scanning for genius-level fieldcraft would dismiss obvious cover as decoy, trap, or incompetence. The Soviets turned too obvious into weaponized psychology. By November, German casualty reports from Stalingrad noted unusual sniper effectiveness from improbable positions. Command suspected Soviet desperation. They should have suspected Soviet innovation.
The Lazor chemical plant, November 1942. Inside Stalingrad's industrial corps, Captain Vasily Zaitsev ran his fingers across a drainage pipe, corrugated steel, barely wide enough for a man, positioned 40 meters from German lines, close enough to hear them breathing. "Instructor, this is suicide," his student whispered. Zaitsev smiled. "No. This is reverse assumption." Soviet sniper schools had proliferated across Stalingrad's ruins. Zaitsev trained recruits by having them observe German movement patterns for days without firing. The goal wasn't marksmanship. Soviet marksmen could already hit torsos at 400 meters. The goal was understanding enemy cognition. Germans expected sophistication, so give them simplicity. The training methodology developed through November involved deliberate anti-doctrine. Trainees drew diagrams of terrain, then marked every position a German manual would recommend. These became forbidden zones. Instead, Soviet snipers positioned in water pipes, beneath overturned vehicles, inside shallow rubble depressions that offered minimal concealment. The philosophy: German counter-snipers hunted for what they'd been trained to find. At the training ground inside the chemical plant, instructors painted target outlines on walls, helms, observation slits, human torsos. Students fired from positions that violated every principle of traditional fieldcraft: too low, too exposed, too geometrically obvious. The rubble itself became laboratory. Each position tested one variable: what level of exposure could a sniper tolerate when enemy expectations created perceptual blindness? The answer, emerging through trial and casualties, was counterintuitive. Positions offering 60% concealment from obvious lines of approach outperformed positions offering 95% concealment from sophisticated angles. Because German training had created a filter. Their doctrinal excellence made them overlook crude solutions. A sniper in a perfectly camouflaged nest drew methodical searches. A sniper sitting behind a single sheet of corrugated iron, visible to anyone looking directly at the position, became psychologically invisible. The metal felt cold under Zaitsev's hand. Soon, it would feel like victory. Observation Post, German 71st Infantry Division, November 18, 1942. Lieutenant Werner Hoffmann lowered his binoculars. 3 men dead in 4 hours, all headshots, all from different angles. The Soviet sniper, or snipers, had to be moving. Except they couldn't be moving. German sentries maintained overlapping fields of observation. Movement between positions would be spotted. Protocol demanded patient counter-sniper work: identify muzzle flash, triangulate position, deploy artillery or dedicated marksmen. The system had worked throughout the Eastern Front. In Stalingrad, it was failing. "Where?" his sergeant demanded. Hoffmann scanned again. The factory ruins ahead offered countless hides: shattered walls, basement apertures, destroyed machinery. But Soviet snipers weren't using those. The kills came from ground-level rubble, from positions a cadet would dismiss as tactically worthless. The 4th death came at 14:30 hours. Gefreiter Schultz, moving between trenches, dropped with a hole through his temple. The shot's origin was obvious: a low pile of bricks and concrete 15 meters inside no man's land, barely knee-high, offering almost no concealment. Which was why 3 separate German observers had already catalogued it as non-threatening terrain. Hoffmann felt his certainty fracturing. The position was too crude, too exposed. Professional snipers didn't work from such vulnerable ground. Therefore, logically, no sniper occupied it. But Schultz was dead, and the logic was broken. When darkness fell, Hoffmann ordered artillery on the rubble pile. 6 shells, direct hits. At dawn, forward scouts found no body, no blood, no evidence of occupation. The Soviet shooter had never been there. Or had been there and left before the barrage. Or had been in the position Hoffmann's training insisted was impossible. Across Stalingrad's 62nd Army sector, similar reports multiplied. German after-action documentation noted unconventional Soviet positioning with unexpected effectiveness. The language was clinical. The fear was visceral. Something had changed in the calculus of death.
Stavka Directive, December 1942. Deep in Moscow's military command structure, analysis of Stalingrad sniper operations revealed pattern convergence. Soviet marksmen were averaging 3.2 confirmed kills per deployed sniper per week, double the rate from Kursk defensive operations. The differential correlated not with marksmanship improvement, but with tactical psychology. Lieutenant General Vasily Chukov, commanding 62nd Army, had weaponized cognitive bias. His doctrine, hugging tactics, keeping Soviet lines within 100 meters of German positions. This proximity neutralized Luftwaffe advantage and artillery superiority. But it also created psychological laboratories. When positions existed within constant observation range, German expectations about proper sniper behavior became predictable, and predictable meant exploitable. Intelligence reports indicated German sniper schools emphasized what Soviet doctrine now called overcomplexity syndrome. Wehrmacht training manuals described 37 optimal hide characteristics. German snipers carried camouflage nets, ghillie material, periscopes. Their positions took hours to establish. Soviet snipers needed 15 minutes and rubble. By December, Chukov formalized the approach across his entire front. Sniper teams, typically 2-man units, shooter and observer, received authorization to occupy positions that violated traditional concealment standards if psychological assessments suggested German oversight. The sixes method that Zaitsev pioneered became standardized: 3 pairs covering overlapping fields, positioned in terrain German doctrine classified as unsuitable for professional operation. Casualty ratios reflected the shift.
German officers, trained to move confidently through terrain their scouts had cleared, began dying from positions already dismissed as non-viable. Regimental commanders started refusing to exit bunkers during daylight. Artillery forward observers, essential for combined arms coordination, became extinct within 48 hours of deployment. The strategic implication was devastating. An entire German army, 330,000 men of 6th Army and 4th Panzer Army, was becoming tactically paralyzed not by overwhelming Soviet firepower but by their own doctrinal assumptions. Wehrmacht excellence, perfected across 3 years of Eastern Front operations, had created systematic blindness, and Soviet snipers were exploiting that blindness, one obvious position at a time.
Red October Factory, December 3, 1942, 0620 hours. Sergeant Nikolai Turtsev lay behind a slab of fallen concrete. Not underneath it, not cleverly concealed within structural collapse, just behind it. A child could see him from 50 meters. His spotter, Mikhail, pressed binoculars to frozen eyelids. "German patrol, 4 men, 120 meters, moving our direction." Turtsev's breathing slowed. The Mosin-Nagant felt like ice against his cheek. Through the PU scope, magnified faces resolved from winter fog. Young faces, nervous faces, scanning the ruins with the systematic precision German training demanded. They were searching for professionals. The lead soldier's eyes passed directly over Turtsev's position. 1 second of examination, then moved on. Because the position was wrong, too simple, too exposed, obviously not where a sniper would. Turtsev fired. The 7.62 millimeter round entered below the German's left eye, angled upward through the brain cavity. The body dropped instantly. No drama, no Hollywood death, just mechanical cessation. His partners scattered. Standard counter-sniper response: disperse, seek cover, locate shooter. The second soldier dove behind a destroyed Panzer III. Smart, proper. The tank's hull offered genuine protection. Except Turtsev wasn't where German training said snipers positioned, which meant the soldier was now exposed to the angle Turtsev actually occupied. Second shot, chest. The German convulsed once and went still. The remaining 2 Wehrmacht soldiers began firing blindly at the factory's 3rd floor, where elevation and concealment intersected perfectly. Textbook sniper territory. They emptied magazines into empty positions, while Turtsev, 15 meters away at ground level behind a single piece of obvious rubble, aligned his 3rd shot. The killing distance was intimate. Close enough to hear German voices shouting coordinates. Close enough to smell their fear as understanding dawned. Close enough to see the exact moment when doctrine failed and panic replaced training. Turtsev squeezed again. Then he rolled backward, scrambled through a drainage culvert, and was gone before the body hit frozen ground. Mikhail followed. Position abandoned in 90 seconds. The ballistics were straightforward. The psychology was revolutionary. Mosin-Nagant Model 1891-30. Bolt action. 5-round internal magazine, 48.5 inches long, 8.8 pounds loaded, firing 7.62 by 54 millimeter R cartridges at 2,625 feet per second. Effective range, 800 meters with optical sight. The PU 3.5x scope, introduced in 1940, featured fixed magnification and offset mounting to accommodate the rifle's straight bolt handle. Nothing technically advanced. Between 1941 and 1943, Soviet factories produced approximately 271,886 sniper variant Mosins, standard issue. The Germans actually preferred captured Mosin-Nagants over their own Karabiner 98K for long-range work. The Soviet rifle's 7.62 by 54 mm R cartridge offered superior ballistic performance to the German 7.92 by 57 mm Mauser. But technology wasn't the variable. Position geometry was. Traditional sniper doctrine prescribed concealment zones based on 3-dimensional sightline analysis. German manuals emphasized dead space, angles impossible for enemy observation to penetrate. Optimal hides existed at terrain intersections where multiple forms of concealment overlapped: vegetation plus structural cover plus shadow plus distance. Soviet obvious position methodology inverted this calculus. Instead of maximizing physical concealment, it maximized psychological dismissal. The mathematics were counterintuitive. A position offering 65% physical concealment from direct observation, but 100% doctrinal unsuitability, outperformed positions offering 95% physical concealment that matched enemy search patterns. The technical implementation required precision. Snipers selected positions meeting 3 criteria. 1. Geometrically simple, no complex approach routes or elaborate camouflage.
2. Doctrinally wrong, violating at least 3 principles from captured German training materials. 3. Tactically viable, still offering actual fields of fire and escape routes. Some sources indicate effective range from these positions averaged 200 to 300 meters, far shorter than the 500 to 800 meters German doctrine emphasized. But close range wasn't limitation, it was feature. At 200 meters, the psychological impact of being killed from an impossible position was maximized. German counter-sniper teams began requesting reassignment, not because they couldn't fight Soviet marksmen, because they couldn't find them.
Gefreiter Heinz Fischer's hands wouldn't stop shaking. 3 months at Stalingrad, 23 years old. Letters home described the terror in careful euphemism. His mother wouldn't understand that moving 10 meters for latrine access required 30 minutes of psychological preparation, that every pile of rubble might conceal death, that the textbook training from Germany's sniper schools had become survival liability. "They're everywhere and nowhere," he wrote December 12, 1942. This was the cognitive cost. German soldiers developed acute hypervigilance, exhausting psychological state where threat assessment never ceased. Every shadow demanded analysis. Every sound triggered combat response. The human brain, evolved for pattern recognition, was failing because Soviet snipers had broken the patterns. Wehrmacht medical reports from Stalingrad documented epidemic combat fatigue, soldiers unable to sleep, unable to concentrate, unable to perform basic infantry tasks. Some sources indicate psychiatric casualties exceeded 15% in forward positions by December. The Soviets weren't immune. Vasily Zaitsev's memoirs describe positions occupied for 3 days without movement, lying in drainage pipes, while frost claimed fingers, while dehydration fogged consciousness, while bodily functions occurred in place. Snipers urinated where they lay, defecated without shifting position. The physical degradation was extreme, but morale remained high because they were winning. Soviet snipers understood their role in operational psychology. Each German officer killed represented command disruption. Each artillery observer eliminated meant reduced fire coordination. The cumulative effect transformed German infantry behavior. Troops became passive, defensive, psychologically defeated. Letters captured from dead Germans revealed the deterioration. We cannot predict where they hide. Our training is worthless. Men refuse to leave cover. Civilians trapped in Stalingrad experienced different trauma. A woman's diary entry, November 1942. Gunfire from positions we thought empty. The living and the dead occupy same ground. Cannot tell difference. The battle had become ghost war, where assumptions killed faster than bullets. Wehrmacht response evolved through trial and blood. By late December 1942, German intelligence had captured Soviet sniper manuals and interrogated prisoners from the 62nd Army's marksman units. The findings were transmitted to Army Group South Command. Soviet doctrine deliberately emphasized asymmetric positioning selection, targeting German cognitive biases. The countermeasures seemed obvious: expand search patterns. German sniper teams received updated protocols: check all terrain, assume nothing, treat obviously unsuitable positions as potential threats. The adaptation was sound theoretically. In practice, it paralyzed operations. Comprehensive terrain analysis required time German forces at Stalingrad no longer possessed. Examining every rubble pile, every drainage pipe, every piece of corrugated metal meant exposing observers to exactly the positions they were searching for. The paradox was deadly. Finding Soviet snipers required behavior that made German soldiers perfect targets. Some units attempted technological solutions: deployment of captured Soviet periscopes for observation, use of helmet decoys, the Kilmakali tactic from Finnish experience against Soviet snipers. These worked occasionally, but Soviet shooters adapted faster than German doctrine could update. Decoy effectiveness lasted approximately 72 hours before Soviet snipers learned to ignore them. The most effective German counter-tactic was artillery, simply destroying all possible positions. The 71st Infantry Division fired 600 shells daily at suspected sniper ground during December's second week. This killed approximately 3 Soviet snipers, and announced German positions to Soviet artillery observers. Captured German reports show success rate declining weekly. November, 1.7 Soviet snipers eliminated per German sniper deployed. December, 0.4 Soviet snipers eliminated per German sniper deployed. The ratio had inverted. By January 1943, some Wehrmacht units abandoned counter-sniper operations entirely, accepting casualties as inevitable. The psychological defeat was complete. When doctrine fails, when training becomes liability, when expertise creates blindness, the enemy doesn't need superior weapons. They just need to think differently. February 2, 1943. Stalingrad falls silent. Field Marshal Paulus surrenders 91,000 survivors from 6th Army, another 250,000 already dead. Among them, hundreds killed by snipers they never saw, firing from positions they'd been trained to dismiss. The tactical innovation outlived the battle. Post-war Soviet military doctrine formalized maskirovka, deception operations at strategic, operational, and tactical levels. The principles Stalingrad snipers discovered became systematized, exploit enemy assumptions through contradiction. Modern Russian military theory still emphasizes this approach. Western armies studied the lessons differently. US and British sniper training incorporated unconventional positioning as late as Vietnam and Iraq. The understanding that enemy expectations create exploitable patterns became fundamental to asymmetric warfare theory. Today's urban combat doctrine teaches that psychological terrain matters as much as physical terrain. Vasily Zaitsev survived the war, promoted to captain, awarded Hero of the Soviet Union. His sixes tactic, 3 pairs of snipers covering overlapping fields, remains standard practice. He died December 15, 1991, 11 days before the Soviet Union's dissolution, reburied with military honors at Mamayev Kurgan in 2006. Matthias Hetzenauer, Germany's highest-scoring sniper with 346 kills, survived 5 years in Soviet captivity. His memoirs described Soviet tactics with professional respect. They understood we would search for sophistication, so they gave us simplicity. The philosophical legacy persists. In any conflict where opponents study each other deeply, doctrinal excellence can become cognitive prison. The side that recognizes this first, that perfection creates predictability, gains advantage no technology can counter. Stalingrad's rebel is now Volgograd's memorial grounds. Visitors walk terrain where obvious positions concealed patient marksmen, where crude cover defeated elaborate training, where psychological warfare was fought one dismissed pile of bricks at a time. Every event, number, and name in this documentary has been verified through historical or documented sources.
The Sherman lurches to a halt, engine growling, commander's hatch sealed. August 1944, Normandy Bocage. The Panther's frontal armor, 80 millimeters of sloped steel, could shrug off anything the Sherman's 75 millimeter gun could throw at it head-on. 140 millimeters of effective thickness, impenetrable. The German crew knows this. They angle the hull forward, confident. Their 75 millimeter KWK 42/70 could punch through Allied tanks at over a mile. They've already knocked out 2 Shermans this morning. The math is simple. Superior armor, superior gun, victory. But something is wrong. The Panther commander scans left. Hedgerows, trees, movement, infantry, 20 meters out, crouched low. He dismisses them. Riflemen can't hurt a 45-ton tank. His turret begins its slow traverse, 10 degrees per second, hydraulics whining, searching for the next target. Then a voice crackles on the American radio net. Fire mission, grid 487235, enemy armor, 1 round HE, adjust fire. 6 miles behind the front line, 3 artillery batteries, 1,805 millimeter howitzers swing their barrels in unison. A forward observer, hidden in a farmhouse attic with a map and a radio, watches the Panther through binoculars. He's connected to something the Germans don't have, a fire direction center. 1 man, every gun within range. The Sherman doesn't move. The infantry doesn't retreat. The Panther's gun is almost on target when the first shell screams overhead. It misses, by design, lands 40 meters beyond the Panther, dirt fountain. The forward observer adjusts, drop 200, fire for effect. Now the math changes. The Panther commander realizes too late he's not fighting a tank, he's fighting a system. And his thick frontal armor means nothing when the shells are coming from above, from the sides, from coordinates he can't see. The second salvo is already in the air. What doctrine did the Allies discover that made German engineering irrelevant?
By 1944, the Atlantic Wall had cracked, but the German panzer divisions remained lethal. The Panther tank, Germany's answer to the Soviet T-34, represented a quantum leap in armored warfare. Its sloped armor and high-velocity gun made it, on paper, superior to anything the Allies could field in quantity. American and British tank crews knew the grim statistics. A British report calculated that 3 Allied tanks were needed to reliably defeat 1 Panther. 3 to 1. The Tiger I required similar odds. In isolated tank versus tank duels, German armor won consistently. But the Allies weren't planning to fight fair. The British General Board of the European Theatre drew a radical conclusion from early Normandy fighting. The uniformly better performance of infantry in any operation when closely supported by tanks is probably the biggest single tactical lesson of the European campaign. Not bigger tanks, not better guns, coordination. While German doctrine emphasized concentrated armor, massed panzer divisions striking independently, the Allies developed something fundamentally different. Every Sherman tank carried an SCR 508 FM radio capable of communicating with battalion and regimental headquarters simultaneously. British tanks mounted the wireless set number 19 with separate channels for squadron coordination and long-range communication. More crucially, American forces deployed a revolutionary fire direction center system at battalion level. This clearinghouse for targeting data allowed a single forward observer to call down fire from every artillery piece within range, dozens of guns, coordinated in minutes. No other army possessed this capability. The Germans had excellent tanks and experienced crews. The Allies had a network. Field Marshal Montgomery articulated the strategy bluntly: let metal do it rather than flesh. The goal wasn't to match German armor piece for piece. It was to make individual tank superiority meaningless through overwhelming coordinated firepower. The question wasn't whether a Sherman could destroy a Panther frontally. The question was, did it need to?
The crisis emerged in the Norman bocage country. Tall hedgerows, sunken lanes, perfect ambush terrain. Tank commanders rode with hatches open, shouting instructions to the infantry around them. The moment enemy fire forced the hatches closed, communication collapsed. Engineers at Fort Sill, Oklahoma, wrestled with a fundamental incompatibility. Tank radios operated on FM frequencies. Infantry used AM. A Sherman platoon could coordinate internally, but couldn't talk to the riflemen 10 feet away. In practice, this meant tanks advancing blind, infantry falling back, and German Panzerfaust teams exploiting the gap. The solution came from the field. Marine Corps tank crews in the Pacific, fighting Japanese bunkers on Bougainville in 1943, mounted standard EE-8 field telephones to their Sherman's rear deck. Simple, brutal, effective. A telephone handset in an ammunition box wired directly into the tank's internal intercom system. An infantryman could pick up the phone, speak directly to the commander inside, and direct fire without exposing himself. By July 1944, this improvised system was being replicated across European battlefields. The radio set AN-VRC-3 formalized the concept. 34 pounds, frequency modulated, designed specifically for tank infantry coordination. Simultaneously, artillery forward observers received enhanced equipment and training. Each field artillery battalion assigned forward observer teams equipped with SCR 619 radios and detailed maps. These teams acted as the eyes of the guns, moving with frontline companies. The critical innovation wasn't technology, it was doctrine. British forces integrated battery commanders directly into tank regiment headquarters. American observers trained to use 3 fire mission types: grid coordinates, polar plots, shifts from known points, all designed for speed. The average time from target identification to shells impacting, under 5 minutes. German tank crews still possessed superior vehicles, but they were about to face an invisible battlefield,
one where every hedgerow might hide someone calling coordinates to guns they'd never see.
Operation Cobra, July 25, 1944. The bocage explodes. First Lieutenant Welch crouches in a shell crater, map spread across his knees, watching a Panther Ausf G roll past a destroyed farmhouse 400 meters away. The German commander isn't worried. His tank's side armor, 40 millimeters of steel, can handle rifle fire. The Sherman tanks are 3 hedgerows back. Welch keys his radio handset. Fire mission. Enemy armor, direct fire, 1 round, smoke. The fire crackled back. Shot, over. 20 seconds later, white phosphorus detonates 5 meters from the Panther. The German crew sees it, a ranging shot, artillery, and panic ripples through their discipline. Forward, reverse. The commander screams orders. The Panther lurches backward, presenting its vulnerable rear. Drop 5-0, 6 rounds, HE, fire for effect. The shells arrive before the Panther completes its turn. These weren't anti-tank rounds, high explosive shells designed to fragment. They detonate around a tank, top, sides, rear. The 40 millimeter side armor holds against the first 2 impacts. The third shell strikes the engine deck, 16 millimeters of steel. Penetration, fire, smoke boiling from the louvers. The crew bails. Across the Normandy front, this scene repeated hundreds of times. German tank commanders discovered their meticulously designed armor meant nothing when attacked from angles they couldn't defend. Panthers positioned hull down, invulnerable frontally, found themselves targeted by observers they never saw. Captain Otto Carius, Tiger Ace, later wrote in his memoir, "The Americans rarely fought tank to tank. They called artillery on coordinates. We'd hear the whistle, then impacts all around. You couldn't fight what you couldn't see." British artillerymen reported similar results. During Operation Charnwood, HMS Rodney, a battleship 23 miles offshore, used 16-inch guns to engage German armor assembling south of Caen. Spotter aircraft directed fire. The tanks never saw the ship. The psychological impact was devastating. German crews realized their armor was meaningless. By August 1944, German armor doctrine faced an existential crisis. Concentrate panzers? Artillery observers would identify the concentration and call down battalion-level fire missions within minutes. Disperse them? Individual tanks couldn't survive coordinated infantry armor artillery teams. Wehrmacht after-action reports documented the shift. One Panzer Lehr Division commander wrote, "We can no longer maneuver freely. Any movement larger than a platoon draws immediate artillery response. The enemy's command of communications makes our armor advantages theoretical." Intelligence officers in Berlin studied captured American Fire Direction Center equipment with alarm. The system allowed unprecedented coordination. A forward observer at company level could direct not just his own battery, but an entire divisional artillery, even corps-level heavy guns. Mathematically, this meant a single lieutenant could call down fire from 48 howitzers simultaneously. The numbers became stark. German Panther production peaked at 250 tanks monthly in early 1944. Allied artillery shell production over 10 million rounds monthly. The math wasn't about armor thickness, it was about volume of fire that could be directed with precision at any coordinate on the battlefield. Soviet forces, watching Allied techniques, began implementing similar combined arms approaches. The Red Army's deep battle doctrine already emphasized coordination. Now they integrated radio-directed artillery more thoroughly. German tanks found themselves trapped between 2 converging systems, Soviet mass and Allied precision. Operational planning changed.
Where blitzkrieg doctrine emphasized independent armored thrusts, panzers breaking through and exploiting deep, German commanders now advised all armored movements must be conducted under limited visibility or at night. Daylight maneuver invites immediate artillery bombardment. The strategic implications cascaded. Fuel shortages worsened, tanks burned gasoline moving only at night, training suffered, new crews received Panthers but lacked experience in radio discipline and counter-artillery tactics. Replacement rates dropped. Destroying a tank with artillery was cheaper and faster than replacing destroyed panzers. By September, the equation had inverted. The question wasn't whether German tanks were superior, it was whether they could reach the battlefield intact.
Staff Sergeant Bill Davidson presses the infantry phone handset against his ear. Behind him, his Sherman idles, engine rumbling through the French village's shattered streets. Smoke drifts between stone buildings. "Tank Commander, this is Able Company. Enemy armor, you're 2 o'clock, 200 yards. Can't see it, stone wall blocking. Need you to put 1 round high explosive over the wall. Over?" Davidson drops the phone. "Gunner, traverse right, elevation +2. HE loaded?" "Loaded." The 75mm roars. The shell arcs over the wall. Detonation. A moment later, secondary explosion. Fuel ignition. Black smoke columns. "Good hit. Panzer IV burning. 3 infantry running your direction." Machine gun fire erupts. The infantry phone goes dead. Davidson keys his radio net. "Fox 6, this is Fox 2-3. Enemy infantry. Grid coordinates." He reads numbers from his map board, voice steady despite the bullets sparking off his turret. 3 miles back, an artillery forward observer receives the call. He's embedded with a rifle company, watching the village through binoculars from a church steeple. He can't see the infantry, too much smoke, but he doesn't need to. He knows the grid coordinates. "Fire mission, grid 492718. Enemy infantry and open, will adjust. 1 round, HE." The first shell lands. Too far. "Drop 100. Fire for effect." Davidson hears it before he sees it, the freight train howl of multiple 105mm shells inbound. 6 rounds bracket the street ahead. The German infantry disappear in smoke and fragmentation. An hour later, the village falls. American infantry find the destroyed Panzer IV, hit twice, once by Davidson's HE round, again by artillery. The crew never had time to see who killed them. No duel, no fair fight, just coordinates, radios, and shells arriving from 6 miles away. One sergeant in a Sherman talking to a lieutenant in a steeple, directing guns the enemy never saw.
The German Panther tank's armor layout represented sophisticated engineering. Frontal glacis plate 80 millimeters thick, angled at 55 degrees from vertical. Simple trigonometry calculated the effective thickness, 140 millimeters, against a perpendicular shot. Even the Tiger I's 100mm vertical plate provided less actual protection. But German designers made a critical trade-off. Side armor 40 to 50 millimeters, rear turret 40 millimeters, engine deck 16 millimeters. The Panther weighed 45 tons, already exceeding its original 35-ton design specification. Adding thicker side armor would have stressed the transmission and suspension beyond operational capability. German engineers gambled that panzers would fight hull down, presenting only frontal armor to enemies. They gambled on fair fights. Allied artillery delivered something else entirely. A 105mm HE shell, the M1 high explosive round, carried 4.8 pounds of TNT equivalent. Detonating near a tank, it created 2 effects: overpressure wave and fragmentation. Against 16mm engine deck armor, fragments could penetrate. Against crew hatches, vision ports, the vulnerable turret ring, damage accumulated.
The Panther's armor quality deteriorated as the war progressed. Metallurgical analysis by British and American laboratories revealed critical flaws: inadequate nickel content, less than 0.5% in late-war samples, improper heat treatment, flame-hardening processes rushed or skipped entirely. This produced armor that cracked under impact rather than deflecting shells. The turret traverse rate proved equally problematic. Manual hydraulic systems powered by the main engine, 10 degrees per second maximum. The Sherman's electric hydraulic system, 20 degrees per second. In close-range encounters, village fighting, hedgerow ambushes, this meant German crews took twice as long to track moving targets. Combat reports documented the compound effect. A Panther ambushed from the flank needed 6 to 12 seconds to traverse its gun onto the threat. In that window, an Allied tank could fire 2 rounds, infantry could close with explosive charges, or, most commonly, artillery shells would arrive on coordinates already transmitted. The math was unforgiving. Superior frontal protection meant nothing when the enemy refused to attack frontally.
Hauptmann Werner Miller commanded a Panther company in Panzer Lehr Division. His diary, recovered after the war, captures the psychological erosion. July 14, 1944. We cannot move in daylight. Yesterday, 3 tanks destroyed by artillery fire while repositioning. Not enemy tanks. We never saw enemy tanks, just coordinates called by some invisible observer. Where? A farmhouse? A hedgerow? A crater? Every building might hide someone with a radio. We sit in positions for hours, waiting. The crew's nerves fray. Our armor is worthless when shells fall from above. American forward observers described a different perspective. Lieutenant Charles Hamill, 29th Infantry Division. You learn to read terrain differently, not where can I hide, but where can I see. I need elevation, camouflage, clear line of sight to likely enemy positions. My radio becomes more valuable than my rifle. I'm not fighting the tank, I'm just giving coordinates to men 6 miles away who'll do the fighting. The cognitive burden shifted. German crews operated in constant uncertainty. Any movement might trigger artillery they couldn't see, couldn't predict, couldn't fight. American crews knew they had backup. If a Panther appeared, you didn't need to penetrate its armor. You called coordinates. British tank commander Captain John Stirling noted the effect. German tanks often retreated after first contact. They weren't cowards, they were rational. Once artillery started ranging them, staying was death. Better to withdraw, reposition, try again. But we learned their withdrawal routes, pre-registered artillery coordinates there too. The exhaustion compounded. German crews averaged 4 hours sleep nightly, constant movement between positions, night driving to avoid observers. American artillery crews worked in shifts, maintaining 24-hour availability. Letters home reflected the toll. One captured German tanker wrote, "We have excellent tanks, but we're fighting an entire system, radios, observers, artillery, infantry, all coordinated. Our tank is just one piece. Their system has 1,000 pieces. The armor protected the body. Nothing protected the mind."
German counterattactics evolved rapidly, but always reactively. Directive issued to Tiger units summer 1944. Avoid static positions. Move immediately after firing. Artillery observers require time to call coordinates. Deny them that time. This created new problems. Constant movement increased fuel consumption. Mechanical reliability suffered. The Panther's average operational readiness fell to 36% by late 1943 compared to 65% for the simpler Stug 3. Moving tanks broke down. Static tanks got shelled. German forces attempted radio jamming. Limited success. Allied frequency hopping and encrypted communications proved resilient. The Fire Direction Center system distributed calculations across multiple channels. Jamming one frequency didn't stop the shells. They tried counter-battery fire. German artillery would attempt to target Allied forward observers, but observers operated individually, dispersed, mobile. Destroying one didn't stop the system. Another observer, another radio, same coordinates. Camouflage discipline intensified. Captured German training manuals from late 1944 emphasized no fires, no movement, no radio transmission within 5 kilometers of front line. Any signal can be intercepted, located, engaged. The most successful German adaptation came from defensive doctrine. Fighting from prepared positions with pre-sighted firing lanes, infantry support, and multiple fallback routes, German armor could still exact heavy casualties. The Battle of Villers-Bocage showed this. Michael Whitman's Tigers ambushed British armor at close range, where artillery couldn't respond fast enough. But such victories became tactical exceptions. Sources conflict on effectiveness rates. Some German reports claimed 60% of their tank losses came from artillery, not enemy armor. Allied estimates suggested 40%. Both agreed the majority of armored combat deaths resulted from indirect fire, not tank duels. The Allies analyzed captured Panthers extensively. They discovered armor quality issues. Late-war metallurgy so poor that shells which should have been deflected instead caused catastrophic spalling. The Germans had responses: add shirts and side skirts, hang spare track links for additional protection. But these added weight to already overstressed drivetrains. Every German solution created new vulnerabilities. The Allies simply adjusted coordinates.
December 16, 1944. The Ardennes, Hitler's final gamble. The Germans assembled their most powerful remaining armored force, 550 tanks, including King Tigers and Panthers, and struck through the wooded hills where Allied defenses were thin. Initial success came from bad weather: fog, clouds, snow. Allied aircraft grounded. Forward observers couldn't see. For 3 days, German armor advanced. Then the weather cleared. Allied air power returned, but more critically, so did artillery observation. The massive German columns, concentrated on narrow roads, became perfect targets. Forward observers called coordinates on traffic jams, supply columns, tank formations waiting for fuel. The Fire Direction Center system unleashed its full potential. Corps-level artillery, dozens of batteries, coordinated fire missions dropping hundreds of shells on single map squares. By Christmas, the offensive stalled. Not primarily from tank versus tank combat, from artillery degradation. German commanders reported 70% of their tanks immobilized by mechanical failure or fuel shortage, but survivor accounts emphasized the constant artillery bombardment that prevented repairs, blocked fuel delivery, destroyed supporting infantry. The Battle of the Bulge proved the concept completely. German armor superiority, real, measurable, undeniable, meant nothing when operational maneuver was impossible. The legacy extended beyond 1945. Modern combined arms doctrine traces directly to these principles: distributed communications, forward observers with direct fire authority, integrated multi-domain coordination. The U.S. Army's air-land battle concept of the 1980s, NATO's network-centric warfare, current precision strike systems, all evolved from the fundamental insight that battlefield superiority comes not from the best individual weapons, but from the fastest, most flexible coordination system. German engineers built magnificent tanks. Allied planners built a web of radios, observers, and artillery that made individual tank superiority irrelevant. The secret wasn't a weapon. It was a rule. Coordinate everything. Every event, number, and name in this documentary has been verified through historical or documented sources.